Today's episode is brought to you by the Tax Defense Group. Did you know that in order to get your stimulus check, you had to have filed your taxes for the 2018 or 2019 tax year? If you haven't filed yet, there's good news. The Tax Defense Group can rush e-file your taxes. They know that millions of Americans are struggling, and they want to make sure that you get your stimulus check sooner rather than later. Call the Tax Defense Group today at 800-850-7973 to get started. And you can visit them online at thetaxdefensegroup.com. And our other sponsor for today is Writer Junkie. Due to the global pandemic, Writer Junkie is offering their resume writing service for only $100. And with the 3-day turnaround, you can't beat that price and delivery time. Call Writer Junkie today at 805-587-7966, and you can visit them online at writerjunkie.com. Mention that you saw this ad on UCAS Studios, and they'll get right to work. Hi, welcome to the Talk Spot. This is Marcus, and today I'm joined again by Reuben Langdon. Reuben's been on the show several times, and definitely very thankful for having him back. How have you been doing, man?
Good. What has it been, 2 weeks since we talked? A week?
I can't remember. I think it's been 2 weeks, I think.
And the last time we talked, it was, we were kind of getting into the positive sides of virus and trying to look at it from different perspectives. And I feel since then, wow, so much has happened, so many more revelations, even more conspiracy theories, but also some not so conspiracy theories, if you know what I mean. I mean, we're actually finding proofs to some of the conspiracy theories that were actually just starting and bubbling at that time. So it's interesting how rapidly this is all unfolding. And as I said in the last podcast, this has all been sort of predicted in a way from my interviews and interactions with these so-called extra dimensionals. I don't know if that's something you wanted to get in today, but that would be something I'd love to cover. And my series, Interview with Ed, it's still ongoing on Gaia. New episode just came out yesterday. And we're in interesting times for sure.
No, definitely. No, I love to get into that. I guess the first thing, though, I'd love to talk about is, since the last time we spoke, there was really big news in the world of aliens and UFOs and extra dimensionals, and that was... Right. So, I guess for this whole... I think I looked up the video. So it was basically, what was it, like a week ago or a week and a half ago, the Pentagon basically released 3 short little snippets, right, of UFOs flying around?
Well, yeah, to be technical, so these 3 videos had already been released. Tom DeLonge, in 2017, he announced the To the Stars Academy, which was a company, a benefit corporation. He was going public with it, a public benefit corporation, selling shares, said he's working with these top ex-government officials, ex-CIA guys, Hal Puthoff, who's a scientist, well-known scientist, an NSA guy, a CIA guy, a few other interesting characters. If you go to their website, you can sort of check them all out. So they were sort of officially, unofficially releasing these official, unofficial videos. They were saying at that time, Tom was saying these are official Pentagon videos. Then we had my buddy Jeremy Corbell brought David Favor onto Joe Rogan, and he was the pilot of one of those videos, the pilot of the plane. There were all these videos are coming from military aircraft, the gun camera footage, which has highly sophisticated cameras. They've got all kinds of technology built into them, even though they look horrible. And they're like, what? How come, some of the memes, it's like we can see from a satellite 3 miles in the air, we can see crystal clear pictures, and yet a military release of a UFO, they just seem to be these usual dirty, unclear videos, right? This is the usual thing. From my understanding, we got the low-res versions. There are higher-res versions that the military has. Maybe they're trying to hide something. Who knows? So that all went down in 2017. The New York Times actually did a pretty decent article legitifying the thing. Leslie King, who's a researcher and author, she helped co-write the article. I think she did an amazing job, and it really sort of grounded into the normal folks in 2017 that this is a real situation. Shortly after that, we had the mainstream news started talking about it a little bit, You had Tucker Carlson on Fox almost every week coming out and having different guests and special folks on. Recently, he's had Nick Pope on, who was part of the Citizen hearing, which I co-produced in 2013. The Citizen hearing on disclosure, and he used to work for the UK's MOD. He was in charge of releasing some of these files, getting some of them released, and sort of worked in that department of investigations of this phenomenon. So he was answering calls, and he helped some cases see the light or get a broader light. Since then, you've had mainstream news sort of talking about UFOs, bringing them to light. I think Tucker even asked Donald Trump when he was in Japan for some sort of meeting, what's the deal, And Trump says, well, I don't really believe in UFOs, but I do believe our airmen. They're professional, and I really think I believe them. And what the airmen are saying, that David Favor of the Navy, retired Navy, is saying they got to be UFOs in essence, right? We don't know what they are. It's definitely not from this planet, right? So, okay, it's a UFO. It's not from this planet. It's either extraterrestrial or extra dimensional or some kind of extra something. So you have the pilots confirming that, and now you have the Navy sort of putting the official stamp on it, because there was all this internet chatter. Oh, the videos are fake. George Knapp did a great job and sort of found some paperwork from the Pentagon files or somehow that basically showed that these videos did belong to the Pentagon. They were checked out, but still you had this whole internet chatter of people, trying to disprove it. I guess for some people, it can be a scary thing to think that we're not alone in this universe, and that there are objects of unknown origin, non-human intelligences flying around in our airspace. So I think our military and governments have gotten used to this, but I guess it's trickled down to the public. That's still a big leap of faith, so to say, to believe that. So they try everything in their power to debunk or ridicule or whatever. But now that we have this Pentagon stamp, we're kind of in a different paradigm now. We're in a whole nother, we're kind of in, I say disclosure happened in 2017 with the New York Times article, but this is disclosure 2.0. And then we're going to have a 3.0, we're going to have a 4.0. And it's going to keep going until the freaking ETs land on the White House lawn, end up, handshaking the president, whoever that's going to be at that time, or giving them a hug. That day will come, and this is just part of the process.
What would be the argument against these videos? So even though the Pentagon has said, okay, these are real, what's the other side of it? What's the argument saying, oh, that's really...
At this point, I don't even... I really don't have the time or energy to try to even convince people anymore of, whether this is a true thing, phenomenon or not. I still have some friends who will deny it, but I haven't had those conversations, and I don't think I'm ever. And I don't think they feel comfortable. I think it's still. It doesn't. It's kind of like we were saying about some of this other political stuff prior to the call. It doesn't really matter what. Once you find your position on something, and if that's your position, it doesn't matter how much evidence and how much proof and how much whatever it is that you put into it. Some people are just going to find whatever excuse and way that they want to deny, to not look there, and to find an excuse. A lot of people don't want to be proved wrong, and it's a big belief. If think about it. I'm 44 years old. If I've been drinking the ET Kool-Aid since a little bit as a kid, but in my 30s, is when I saw this fleet in the sky, which completely changed my perspective on everything, really, life. That was sort of my gateway drug into a whole new perspective on reality. And it's a big pill to swallow for a lot of people, because once you swallow that pill, it's going to force you to look at other things that you may have never looked at. And a lot of people just don't want to go there, because we've been programmed for so long to believe a certain way, to have that paradigm shift. And I think this is why it is happening in this sort of gentle way. This is why ETs can't land on the White House lawn, because it would be such a paradigm holy shit moment for so many people. They would, their knee-jerk reaction would be to go get, to scramble the jets and go get an M16 and start mowing these things down, because it's just too far out. It has to be gentle. It's going to take time. Otherwise, it would fry people's brains in a sense.
The whole unloading of everything at once. Yeah, I think that really would freak a lot of people out. And I think that it's not really coincidental either that the Pentagon basically came out and said, okay, yeah, the footage that was released in 2017, that it's real. I don't think that was really much of a stretch that had happened right now, where basically everyone's focused on so many other issues that, it kind of flew under their radar, I think, in a lot of ways. Not saying that it wasn't reported at all, because it was, but I kind of feel like, it really wasn't talked that much about. And it also makes me wonder, and you kind of raised this point already, the idea of what's going to come out next. Yeah, I don't know. those next footages, I don't know. Who knows? It seems like at this rate with the disclosure, like what you're talking about, who knows what could happen? Could you potentially see footage of a being that's not of our world actually caught on tape in a similar way that this footage was, and then 3 years later the Pentagon comes out and says, yeah, that wasn't a guy in a suit or something like that?
Get ready. That's coming. That's coming. But it's also going to, again, I think, happen slow and steady, right? So the Pentagon drop, the To the Stars Academy, first their initial release, it's just been nice and gentle. You just get one video here, another video there, a pilot talking here, and this is going to ramp up more and more. And the more we saturate, people understand, and Ancient Aliens has been doing a great job of this, the TV show. Although I think it's like in its 15th season or some 13th or 15th. It's crazy. The more people get used to this, and it's not a big deal, and then the likelihood of that knee-jerk reaction, go run for the guns and start mowing these things down, is not going to happen. Trust me, our visitors know when that time will be right, when people aren't going to run for their machine guns, and that's when it'll happen. That's when so they're constantly monitoring the energy of the planet, the collective consciousness, where we're at, what we're ready for, where we're not, and little nuggets like the Pentagon drop, like the 1997 Phoenix Lights event, there's other bigger and smaller sightings for small communities, and big sightings for big cities and stuff. This is going to continue to go on, acclimatize the people of the world until we can get to that place where, okay, this is the new norm. These things exist. Oh, yes, there's a government official having a conversation with them. Oh, I've heard there's this community over here, and they're meeting with them, and they're having talks monthly, or whatever it is. And every full moon, the wormhole opens up, and the ship comes out, and the guy comes out, and then they go have a party. I'm laughing as I'm saying that, but I'm also visualizing that and sort of knowing that that's going to happen in our lifetime, and that's a big claim to make. But
I guess when people hear UFOs, I think for a lot of people, the idea in their mind is basically like a frisbee with a ball in the center, where it's just kind of this saucer shape, and I think that's very much in a lot of people's minds kind of the concept of what these ships would look like. What do you think they would actually really tangibly look like if you got up close to me? Like what shape would they have? Do you think they would have that?
Yeah, the traditional frisbee look is what we're used to, because we've had more visitations from those guys. Let's go back to Bob Lazar's. I don't know if you've seen the film Lazar by my buddy Jeremy Corbell. He did a great job, and Lazar 30 years ago came out and said he was working in a division of Area 51 called S4, trying to figure out and reverse engineer what was called the sports model. They had enough intel to know it was from the Zeta Reticuli. The seats were small enough for like children. They were built for a children's size. So, and I think Lazar said he saw a drawing or a picture of the beings that were in it, which is kind of your typical gray-looking alien, right? So we assume, based on that type of evidence, testimony from abductees, who've also seen these craft and the beings associated with them, that many of these round saucer-shaped smaller craft could be from the Zeta Reticuli. And that's an assumption, but I'm sure there's some truth to that. And the fact, though, is that there's records and recordings and witness testimony that there are craft that come in all shapes and sizes. The saucer is the typical one. The cigar-shaped UFO, which tend to be a little bit bigger, are also some. You see glowing balls of light. You see just a square tube, triangular ones with kind of like the boomerang, like in the Phoenix Lights. So you see, there's all kinds of different descriptions of different types of craft. We have, from my research, many different races of civilizations, other civilizations visiting us, and they all, depending on their evolution, depending on where they come from and how they, what properties, physical properties they have on their planet, their technologies are going to differ and vary from civilization to civilization. So we're going to get a whole gamut of different things. Our technology is progressing on a specific sort of evolution timeline, and we're going to have our own unique flying saucers one day, and people on other planets are going to say, "Oh, that's that rectangular triangular thing. Those are the humans." So I don't know.
Well, I think you raised a really good point there too. Is that I think for a lot of people, they've probably only really heard about the gray aliens, and that's really it.
Right.
But so I mean, who are some of the popular races? So, I mean, like I've heard of the reptilians, like I know of them, but who are some of the big players?
The big players, yeah. I cover a lot of this in my series, so if we'll go through it quickly. But if you want more in depth sort of exploration into the big players and actually get to talk to them directly, in a sense, indirectly via channeler, then definitely I recommend going and checking out my series. But the big players, I would say the Pleiades tend to look more like us, humanoid, slightly different facial features as the descriptions. A lot of people in the past sort of associated them blue eyes and blonde hair, but I think that was just a particular group or something like that. From my understanding of the Pleiades, there's all types, and it's a rather large civilization. But the ones that come and visit us, they say they're our cousins, so they are humanoid and look sort of like us. Then there are the Zeta Reticuli beings, the Greys, which are these child-sized, very skinny, large heads, black eyes or larger eyes, sort of a gray, skinnish tone. And then there's all kinds of different variations from that. So there's like the brown ones, like E.T. the movie, and there's more of a bluer tint skin color, greener skin color. And then you have reptilians, which are humanoid looking, rougher skin, not necessarily scales per se. Maybe some of them do have that, but haven't heard that description too much. And then you have like Octurians, which is more of a blue skinned. They kind of look like large versions of the Greys, but blue and big heads, skinny, kind of like what's his name's movie, Spielberg's AI movie at the end, the sort of tall, skinny, grayish, bluish. That's sort of an Octurian, a standard Octurian type image. Then you have the Lemurians, which are more associated with sort of a feminine energy. I'm sorry, a feline energy, also feminine, but feline. And they have somewhat feminine-like characteristics. There are hybrids, which, one of the famous channelers, Bashar, I interviewed Daryl Anka for season 2 of my series. And he's sort of a gray human hybrid, somewhere in the middle there. So he's actually got like pupils. The eyes are black and a little bit smaller head, but smaller body size. And then you have, hybrids of the others, hybrid reptilians and Syrians too, who tend to be humanoid looking, sometimes reported to have like pointed ears, like kind of like a Vulcan or a Spock looking, but also genetically related to us, very close to us. So they would be sort of our cousins and not be too off or too different from the description. So that's kind of, there's more, but that's kind of the basic list, I suppose.
Did you talk about the Aryans too? Because the Aryans, are they the ones that have been most connected to like Antarctica and things like that?
Different takes on that. I haven't gone into too much detail. I haven't personally had any sort of interaction or come into through my channelings and research. That race hasn't really popped up, so I can't really say anything other than what other people are saying out there, which tends to be sort of more of a Palladian type, blonde hair, blue eye, taller. I think maybe another name for them might be the tall whites. I know Paul Hellyer mentioned them in the Citizen hearing. So I'm not sure about them specifically, though. I can't say I've been able to connect with their energy.
Have you looked into the whole, I guess, Admiral Byrd expedition? I forgot what year that was. I don't know if it was like late 40s, early 50s.
Yeah, I have. We interviewed an ex-CIA guy who had a lot of information on that case, actually, that he was read into, he said. But, he said Admiral Byrd, had a battle with some Nazis. And I remember this was early on in my research because I was trying to find out about ETs, and he said, the Nazis had like flying saucers, and it was crazy. And Admiral Byrd got his ass kicked and was told to go home. So like hearing that was just like so out of my paradigm and just like, what? This is crap. What am I talking about ETs? What are you talking about, crazy old man? But we did 2 days interviewing him for 2 days. Richard Dolan did, and we filmed it. And a good portion of his spiel was, the Admiral Byrd, Antarctica, the Nazis infiltrating, Project Paperclip, all the stuff that we know now. At the time when, and I say we know now because we actually have a show called Project Paperclip, right? Yeah. We know this information is sort of more mainstream now, but at the time, I had never heard this information from anyone else, and just from the CIA guy, and I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Is this real? He seemed to think it was.
Man, I hadn't heard that theory before, that like they actually, or not theory, that I've never heard that said before, that there was actually fighting that took place between Byrd and the Nazis. Like, because I feel like there's been a couple.
Byrd knew that there was a base, and like a rogue Nazi base, and actually that's why he got the military, the ships and the planes and stuff. I think he got an aircraft carrier down there, I forget, and went searching for it and found them, and apparently, according to the CIA guy, got their asses handed to them via flying saucers with, I don't know if they had machine guns or lasers or what was going on, but they lost that one. And they kind of came back, is the way it was described to me. I have to go back and look at that interview. It was like, at the time, I was like, this is crazy. I can't put this out. This guy's going to be like, he's going to be discredited. People are just not going to believe this guy because he's talking nonsense about Nazis. And then later I'm finding all this other evidence coming out about it. It's like, whoa, and other people talking about it. I'm like, wow, I guess maybe he was right.
What were some of the stories, like especially when you're making that, or even with your show now, that like have just blown you away? Like, have there been any like firsthand stories that people have told you where you're like, oh my gosh, that knocked my socks off? Like, do you have any like that?
Yeah, I mean, Adam Apollo in my season 2, he talks about his interaction with a Syrian woman. I interviewed 2 people who say they are Mantis. I didn't mention the Mantis Beans, right? Earlier, they're sort of top dogs in in the ET races, the insectoid mantis beans. So I interviewed these two contactees, experiencers, who claimed they were mantis hybrids, so that they had some sort of DNA, some kind of DNA mix of mantis beans. How do we prove that? I'm sure if we took them and got DNA samples, they probably would show up the same. But I tell you what, their experiences that they recalled were quite insane and crazy. But I had my own personal visitation from a mantis bean that I was able to verify without even sharing with them. Like I had before doing the interview, I said, I think I may have had an interaction with mantis bean, but I'd love to hear you guys' take first. And in the interview, as I'm sort of prying and getting information, I realized, oh my God, these people are legit, because everything that happened in my experience, they've experienced that. The information that was sort of downloaded to me, and it was sort of a nice little confirmation in real time. You can, if you watch the interview, you can sort of see me going through this real time process of like, oh, these guys are legit. Because I had my doubts. Anybody who claims they're a human alien hybrid, and like, what? All right. And it wasn't so much that they were claiming that. It was just that was sort of, I guess, their spiel. But moreover was really their experiences and them working with the mantis beans over time and getting specific information to share with the rest of humanity, which is, I guess, kind of what I'm doing.
Well, would you mind talking a little bit about your own personal experience, like what that was like in that story?
I mean, it was the night of a lunar eclipse, and my friends and I went out to watch it. The moon was just this massive, red dot over the horizon. And on the drive home, my teeth started clattering, and I started feeling kind of nauseous almost. And I was like, I gotta get home, guys. Let's go. And I was driving, and I just felt twitching in my hands and sort of uncontrollable nerve jolts, things like this. So I got home, got to bed, and literally ran to bed. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go lay down. And then for about, I don't know, it felt like hours, but maybe it was only like a half an hour to an hour, I received telepathic downloads, images of this mantis bean. As crazy as that sounds, and it's not so crazy when you do a little search on the internet and you find out there's actually a lot of us out there that have had these encounters. And the information being conveyed was a lot of like our history, a lot of the stuff that I've been asking in my series, asking these other ETs, what history of the human race, what are we doing here? What's all this about? And they were sort of showing me some of the lineages and the DNA masters that they are, and how they helped to give birth to humanity on this planet, and through genetic manipulation, genetic donation. So it was really fascinating, and sort of some of the reasons behind it, some of the alternative agendas that are going on. So, and I know your audience may not hear this on a day-to-day basis, but telepathic communication is real, and it's real when you've experienced it. And the closest thing I can say that I've experienced it is in like an ayahuasca ceremony, next to this contact experience. Because I've been in ceremony with the medicine and with people, and I've been able to completely have conversations with them telepathically. and then confirm the next morning. Hey, last night when we were, in ceremony, thank you for all the information, and then I'm like, oh, you received the download. Yes, that's exactly what I was sending you. I was sending you images and information, and that transference, that non-verbal transference, actually did happen and was provable afterwards. We could sort of have that conversation about it. So that's probably the closest I can say that I've had to a telepathic download outside of this actual being having fully engaged and given me this telepathic download. And we feel that in minute amounts with our pets, with our spouses, when we kind of just know something, you just kind of, when your dog has to go out to pee, right? And there's all this subtle imagery and things that come with that, with the dog doing his gestures, but there's a knowingness to a lot of it. You kind of know what your animal's thinking, or if it's in a bad mood or in a happy mood or whatever, there's a knowing there. And anybody who has children or animals, or I'm sure siblings and these kind of things, family members that they're close to, then they kind of have this unspoken empathy. And that's why a lot of ETs, they call it telepathic communication, because empathy is the road you travel down to get to that place where eventually, hopefully without computer chips in our brains, all of humanity will reach this state in our evolution where we can be all telepathic and share information, sort of like it is with the internet, but without having to use devices. We can, one person gets that information, and then the whole collective gets it instantaneously. And when that happens, trust me, our evolution is going to go through like major fast paces.
So in season 2, so you're in season 2 right now of your show, right?
Yeah.
So like in this season, what has been like? Has there been any, I guess, like big pieces of information or any kind of like something that you've heard for the first time where you're like, whoa, I didn't even know that, or it's like, oh, that's really interesting. I hadn't even thought that before. Like, have you come across anything like that?
Yeah. So the themes in the show, which, I like to explore constructs. A lot of the questions I like to ask, constructs of the universe. How is this built? What race or civilization or collective does that energy come from? What are some of the archetypal? What do we have in our society that can sort of connect to that energy, to that specific race? Like I was saying earlier, like the Aryans would be the feline energy, or the Pleiades would be sort of a feminine energy, and we can use like in native cultures, they also associated birds or avian energy with Pleiades, right? And so you always there's these totems and symbols. So exploring all of that's sort of like the base of the show, but also trying to get deeper into getting us closer to this interaction with them. How do we get closer? How do we get closer? How do we get to this place where ETs can land on the White House lawn and not get shot at? And for that to happen, we have to, as a civilization, have to raise our consciousness. And raise isn't really even the right word, because it assumes that there's a lower than. But for old human terminology, because we can sort of picture and understand that, let's just say raise our vibration to a higher state, a more aware state, shift the TV channel, so to say, so we can actually view and see them and then interact with them. And there's a process to doing that. And the reason that hasn't happened again is because our reality has been so dense and heavy with its energy. And we can relate, and this goes into, if everybody wants to join me on a telepathic exercise, you can just sort of feel the energy of war or fighting or hate or injustice separation, and it feels heavy, right? When I say those words, when you visualize what that is, it's just a heavy, dense energy. And when I say the terms density or heaviness, that's what I mean. And when you think of other frequencies like joy, love, compassion, forgiveness, and you say those words, and then you feel and you think about situations like to forgive somebody. What does that feel like? Oh, it actually feels light. It feels liberating. It feels to hate somebody. That's like that. You tense up in your gut. There's a lot of heavy emotion that comes with those types of frequencies. So as we evolve our perception and get out of duality consciousness, or I should say not get out, but transform and transmute into what I like the term Trinity consciousness, then the heaviness can sort of go away, and then we're in this lighter frequency. This we, in a sense, rise, but it's not higher or lower. It's more of an expansive consciousness where we can perceive these other beings because that's sort of the reality that they exist in. And they travel through space and time, bending what we understand as physics, because we just don't. We've been too heavy in our beliefs and our understandings, and our science hasn't reached that state yet, where collectively we can say, oh, these other channels exist, these TV channels or these other realms exist. They're not demons that are going to suck my blood. Maybe those realms exist too, but I can choose to expand my consciousness to a state where that's not going to happen. And there are loving beings, beings that share the same compassion and forgiveness, understanding and love that I want to emulate in my life. So that's sort of a long sort of explanation of that. Did I get off track way completely? I want to bring us back. What were we trying to answer there?
No, I don't think that was. I don't think that was way off. I mean, I think I think the original question was something like along the lines of.
Okay, I got it. So yes, we were. So why I went through all that stuff is in the show. A big part of the show is getting exercises and getting understandings and getting a better idea of how to be in these states of consciousness, to live our lives in a lighter state. So there's a very big spiritual component to this whole thing, and so you can completely refuse that concept and idea and just look at the evidence. And there's plenty of evidence-based stuff. We have the Pentagon and everything else. But what I'm interested in, what I like exploring through my show, is this practical information that's coming from these beings from another dimension through human beings. Is this the sort of how-to? This is kind of an how-to series. How to live your life and make the choices and perceive reality through a specific lens, so you can expand your awareness, expand your compassion, expand your forgiveness, get out of the duality consciousness, and then move into this realm where soon, as it's already naturally evolving, we will be able to make contact and are making contact. That's a big part of my show. I'm making contact. Other people are making contact, and regularly having, in their perception, it may not be for everybody, but in their perception, having physicalized beings show up in the room in the middle of the night or in the day or wherever, and having full-on conversations with these beings. That is happening to a certain extent. Now, can we prove? Where's the evidence? Where's that? It's not there yet. We're not there collectively to have that collective experience just yet. But there sure is enough people, enough that I can have seasons upon seasons of a show of interviewing these people who are having these experiences, and then also interviewing people who are able to tune into a specific frequency, so I can come as close as I can to the real thing and have a conversation with them.
So we've kind of talked a little bit earlier and in previous podcasts as well about this idea of, these UFOs coming to Earth and these, basically these alien beings coming here. Like, have you come across any, I guess, research or any talk about like humans, I guess, like living on other planets or the moon or something like that? I mean, obviously, we all know that, men have walked on the moon, but have you come across anything about any kind of, I don't want to sound too sci-fi, but like, I don't know, space stations? Like, have you heard anything about people going to other worlds or other planets or other celestial bodies beyond just the moon?
There is, Richard Dolan has done a lot of research into this, as well as Linda Moulton Howe. And there seems to be a mountain of evidence that leads towards a conclusion. This is sort of the conclusion that a lot of the researchers come to, of a breakaway civilization. And I say that is because they are literally sort of another human race, in a sense, that is living on perhaps spaces on the moon or on Mars that there seems to be enough data and evidence that point to that sort of thing existing. That hasn't been my sort of big research thing. I haven't gone into that deep, so I can't say, that, wow, I've seen the evidence and it's there and it's for sure, and you guys need to believe that. I believe those researchers. I know Linda and I know Richard, and Richard is probably one of the best, if not the best, researcher in the UFO. He's a historian by education. He's a really well researched guy, and he doesn't put stuff out there that he hasn't checked his dotted his I's and checked his T's or crossed his T's. So he's very, very thorough. And for him to sort of make that claim, I'm gonna take it seriously. Now, other people have made that claim that I don't take seriously, just because I'm saying that, yes, I believe that there's a breakaway civilization, please don't throw me in certain camps that I believe that other people are, there's been some people have come up and said that they are actually from these programs and these things. And it's hard, you're like, okay, well, maybe he is, maybe he's not, who knows? I don't even want to go there. It's like my thing, I guess my spiel in this UFO, my little secret sauce that I can add to the whole UFO thing is these interviews that I'm doing and getting this applicable information that we can apply to our lives to raise our consciousness here on Earth, and not wait for the ETs to come and save us, or for the government to disclose, or any of that stuff.
When you say breakaway civilization, I guess at what point are we talking about breaking away? I mean, are we talking like since, let's just say, the 60s, when like the technology was there for us to land on the moon? I mean, we're talking about breakaway from that standpoint, or are we talking breakaway?
So there's evidence, and I've seen enough of it, where in the 60s, late 50s, 60s, even in the 70s and 80s, a number of top scientists from around the world went missing. And sort of the theory is, and this is before the internet, so what would happen was a lot of them would report to family, and this is a common, this happens to thousands, in fact, of reported cases of family members receiving postcards regular, or hearing a story like, okay, I'm going, so-and-so is going to go overseas to work for such a project, a secret project, or some sort of research project or something. So they tell their family, I'm going overseas to do this. And then they would get, monthly updates via postcards, supposedly pre-written postcards. And then the family would just think, oh, they're overseas, they're working hard, whatever. And then, 2 years go by and they just keep getting these postcards, but they're not getting any feedback from there's no back and forth. There's no phone calls and this kind of thing. So then the family member would get concerned and go do some searches, and then that person it never existed at that place they said they were going to be. That never happened. And so that's many cases of that sort of thing happening. And that's one of many. And again, you'd have to follow Richard Dolan's work on this, of sort of evidence-based things that sort of point to, okay, where are all these top scientists going? Where they're just disappearing off the planet, in a sense, right? Maybe they're going to underground bunkers, maybe they're getting taken out. Who knows? But that was, when you look at the other collective evidence, which again I'm not versed enough in, there seems to be a picture painting toward a breakaway civilization.
Oh, that to me, I mean, that's really fascinating. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, I'm
really
full of surprises. I've got the whole gamut of stuff in my brain, I guess.
Well, one thing that I think is really shocking, and I've thought about this quite a bit, is, we go from the early 20th century that man is able to, create vessels that can fly. The first airplanes were built, the real viable first airplanes that were built in the 20th century, and obviously famously by the Wright brothers. And I can't exactly remember the year now, but I think it was close to 1910, I think, something in that realm. So it's let's just say if it is 1910, we go from 1910 to 1969 is when, we land on the moon, right? So let's just say that's roughly 60 years later, give or take, something like that. And now here we are from 1969. Here we're 51 years later. And according to the official narrative, people haven't been back on the moon, I think, since 1973 or something like that, 74, something in that range. And again, from just the narrative standpoint, to me, I've always thought that sounds so bizarre that we haven't really gone back since the 70s. The technology really hasn't advanced more. How did the technology seem like it advanced more from the early part of the 20th century to 1969 than from 1969 to today, where the computing technology is so much stronger?
Look at the combustion engine. Over 200 years we've been using essentially the same technology. And how come that technology hasn't gotten any better, where the rest of our technology with computers and microchips and everything else has really excelled? So there's been an intentional suppression of certain technologies, and this is where initially the UFO sort of the ET narrative was held back. This is sort of a conclusive. Throughout all the researchers, we all agree that the big reason why there's been a truth embargo on this information, on the ET information, is number one, oil and gas. That's it. Because as soon as you acknowledge that there is an object out there that is flying through the air, doing crazy maneuvers, with making no sound and no combustion of any sorts, then you, by de facto, the Pentagon has acknowledged that technology exists, that can be done. Until then, you make up all the stories and the lies that have been perpetuating for the years, the decades, of they don't exist, and in a state of denial. So we cannot usher in the new energy paradigm, which has existed and been another show I did that never went anywhere. Was calling Disruptive Technologies. That I went and met with people who were making disruptive technologies in their garages, devices that we would term perpetual motion or 0-point energy or these types of things, where we would never really have to recharge in the sense of a battery like we understand now, or put gas in, or meter anything sort of Tesla, original Nikola Tesla type technologies, were being created and still are being created, but were not allowed to come to see the light of the day because of the truth embargo paradigm, the old paradigm that we're in. So the greater thing, actually, I'm glad we're on this subject, because to get back to the Pentagon acknowledgement is sort of a governmental acknowledgement now that we can use that as a stepping point to move forward, because we couldn't do it without the official narrative. Now officially we can move forward into the sort of a post-disclosure world, which means ETs exist, but more importantly for our energy paradigm is a different type of technology also exists. And the narrative can go whether you believe we've had this or not, whether you believe in these other technologies existing in the past or not. I believe they exist because I've seen them. But even if you don't believe Reuben Langdon, you're still now, you can move from that point where saying, okay, these do exist. An object being under intelligent control can go 28,000 miles an hour, stop at a dime, make a 90-degree turn, which we know through physics, our known physics, G-forces would kill anything biological that would be inside of that vehicle. So the only way it could exist if it was under intelligent control and there were actually beings inside was if it was defying any type of gravity. And we know from Bob Lazar's statements and coming out that the vehicle that he was working on actually used gravity waves to propel itself, in a sense, to create a space-time hole that it would fall into, and that's how it would propel itself. And it sort of had its own space-time bubble around it, so it wasn't affected by space and time and gravity around it. Bob Lazar made that claim in the 80s before gravity waves were even discovered. He also mentioned it ran off of a fuel source of element 115, which was before we even discovered and had element 115, which we now have, but it has to be synthesized in specific type of reactors and things. So it can only be made in small amounts. Lazar claims that he had a ton of the stuff and was able, and that was the fuel source for this vehicle that he was reverse engineering. So yeah, it all comes down to energy. That's a big part of it. Another big part of it is this raise in consciousness that I get back to this sort of opening your worldview from, just me and the neighbor and we're fighting to get to the top. All of that paradigm was based on a limited resource type paradigm. Like there's limited resources. It's what is the Darwin idealistic idea of survival of the fittest. And we're realizing, we're sort of evolving. We're realizing, wait, no, that's not how nature works. Wait, we don't have to fight each other over resources. There's actually, if we are smart and use renewable resources without even reverse engineering or doing any of the ET tech, we can sort of use what we have right now and realize that we can shift our paradigm. And it's like, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? It has to happen simultaneously. We have to make the shift to usher in the shift.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Yeah, has to happen at the same time, because otherwise.
I use the story back. They say back in the day, this is sort of an urban legend. I don't know how, real it is or whatever. But back when the Europeans first came over to the Americas, and the natives had. The Europeans in the boats showed up, but they didn't come ashore at first because they were, just sort of hanging out there. And apparently the Indians couldn't see the ships. They were there, but they couldn't see them. And it actually took the shaman, the sort of the medicine man of the village, to go into a trance and then see that there was this other being, this other entity that existed. And then tell the rest of the tribe and say there's ships out there and there's people out there, and this is and then after pointing it out, then the rest of the tribe could actually then visually see the ships. This is sort of, again, I don't know how much facts there are to this, but it sort of gets the idea across that if you have to believe it to see it. And we've been in this paradigm where we're always trying to prove what is not seen to people who don't want to see it. and that's getting back to our politics and everything else we were talking about earlier. So we're how reality works is it's believing before seeing, not the other way around. Not seeing is believing.
No, I think that's a very fascinating point, and man, there's definitely a lot of material that was covered today. I think I feel like after when you first said the name Bob Lazar, like I thought for a second I'm like that name sounded familiar, and then I remember I think it was like a year or two ago. Mm-hmm. I think he got some publicity again. It was last year where that's when he went on Joe Rogan and
my buddy Jeremy released the documentary Lazar, and it was like the #1 documentary on Netflix.
Oh, okay. So that's what happened.
And then Joe's been a fan of this stuff for a long time, and Jeremy was able to connect with Joe, got Lazar on the show, and it was soon, I think, still one of the most popular, most watched Rogan shows. And then right after that is when the kid put out the Let's Go Raid Area 51 Facebook page.
Oh, okay. I remember that.
And then there was like 3 million people signed up, which then actually made the military a little, weary. They were scared. They're like, oh my God, even if only 10% of the people came, still that'd be thousands of people, and we can't handle that kind of thing. It's kind of a bit, and the military was urging everybody, stay home, don't do this. And Jeremy sort of helped turn it into a little festival scene. And basically it became, I wish I had other engagements. I was in Europe on a convention that weekend, but I really wanted to go. I'll probably go this year. And it's like a little mini Burning Man. And it was more about, let's get together in front of Area 51 peacefully, let's not go raid them. And my buddy Jeremy said the military was super cool, like the guys at the gates, and they were like partying, and it was fun. But because everybody just respected each other, it was cool. But yeah, doing that and sort of turning it into an educational event, a Burning Man party too. Yeah, let's party, let's celebrate that ETs are real, and get educated on the issue, what's going on, and have some, speakers come out and talk about the subject, and it's all about having fun. It's not about going and raiding 51 and getting shot at, but it was funny how that exploded. Yeah,
I totally remember the whole raid thing. The thing that really stood out to me about that was the Naruto run. Like, do you remember that?
Yes.
Where it's like
totally,
the running, like how they do from the end. Have you done any work on that show? Like, have you done any?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
No.
But
I know the Naruto run, yes, and I imitate it sometimes myself when I'm goofing off. I think everybody does.
Well, the Naruto run, I feel like, like in the show, it doesn't look lame, but in real life, when you watch videos of people doing it on YouTube, like they look ridiculous. Like no one would naturally run like that. It just looks so weird. And the fact that that guy, I think the fact that guy added.
Yeah, he did it. No, there was somebody. It was during the actual event. A reporter was on talking about it, and then some kid did the Naruto run in the background, and it just looked so ridiculous. And everybody was laughing, and became like a internet, share. We got a couple million shares, meme kind of thing.
Talk about the difference between last year to this year. Last year, people are joking about the Naruto run and things like that. And now this year, on top of everything else, now we're also talking about super killer wasp or whatever. Like, I heard that, I was like,
it never ends.
I mean, it sounds like we're going through like the plagues that like Egypt experienced with during like the book of Exodus. I was thinking, I'm like, geez, and like we've gone from last year where we're joking about memes about aliens to now. I mean, the news is just if you follow too closely, it'll be depressed.
Yeah, this is we're in what it is, and I think we kind of touched on this, but before we close here, what it is, and this is where the ETs talk about this, is we all are, whether we like it or not, we're all moving into this sort of higher state of consciousness, this evolution. And in the lower density realities where time was very slow, you can sort of live in denial or live outside of your truth an entire lifetime, and you would be miserable, it would be horrible, but you could exist. And in these higher, as the Earth itself is as its own being evolving and going into these higher realms, it's taking humanity with it. We're all in this together with the animals, the plants, the whole gamut, right? So as we're moving into these higher states of consciousness, these greater awarenesses, the number one thing is we can't lie to ourselves anymore. We can't do what is not our birthright to do, which is to follow our joy and our passion. And the more we negate that, the more Lisa Royale uses this analogy. It's like taking a beach ball and trying to hold it underwater and using all your force, and many people trying to hold this beach ball underwater. You can only do it so long before you let go and then it shoots out of the water. And I guess the advantage we have as humans compared to many of the other ETs, and this has come up in my interviews many times, is we've been holding this beach ball underwater for so long that it's slipping. The grips, we can't keep it contained underwater any longer. So it's going to shoot up. And what happens is it shoots like a rubber band. The further you pull it back, the faster and farther it's going to go. And that's humanity. So right now, the clutches that hold this beach ball underwater is slipping, and it's slipping rapidly. And in fact, I think it's already been let go, and we're just starting to the beginning of our acceleration going forward. And like we were saying in the last podcast about the innovations and the different things that are going to come out moving forward here we're gonna be in a completely 10 years from now. I guarantee you this. This is like, I have full faith in this. 10 years from now, we're gonna look back at this day and it's gonna be so vastly different.
I believe that. I mean, I certainly hope, especially with the current state of things, that is definitely the case. Who knows? I mean, yeah. I hope that. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, I think that there will be a huge explosion and a huge change. I guess we could probably talk about this in another episode, but just the idea of, hopefully we're heading towards good times. It's so interesting too. Like when people, I don't know. I don't really know when the change happened, but there definitely, I think there is certainly like a nihilism about the future. Like there isn't really like a lot of hope. I think when people think, 40 years into the future, I think, most people think of it like a dystopia and things are really crappy and terrible and, all this stuff. And, 40 years from now, like, I think you and I, we both have a really good chance of being alive in 40 years.
Absolutely.
So it's like, 40 years from now, I'm not even going to be 70. You'll be like in your mid 80s. Like, I hope to be alive at 40 years. I hope it's not Blade Runner 2049 where it's like an apocalyptic wasteland. I don't want that to be the case in 40 years, but it's so hard to even like project that though. Like, it's so hard to even think about that because especially with, there's so much, and again, this isn't necessarily connected to what we've talked about earlier, but I feel like when you watch like the media, which is, all corporate controlled, everything is so negative all the time, every day. Yeah. It has to be negative because if it's not, then it's not news. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But, every day you hear this is happening and that's happening, even before the whole pandemic. That's been going on for years. Every day you turn it on and this thing happened, and it's all bad. And I think it makes people, after a while, even if you're not a major news watcher, even if you're just, like the fact that it's being put out there every day, and even if you're not super deep into following news or politics every day, you're still absorbing it through osmosis. Sure. You're still, absolutely. You go on Twitter or Facebook, you're going to see somebody post about this, post about that. And I think in a lot of sense, I think it's really made people very pessimistic about what's going to happen in the future. And I think, it's like, even with this whole like pandemic now, it's, if you listen to the media, you think that this is the end of the world. But when I'm out and about, I mean, I see like families, I see like parents walking the street with their kids, and like you wouldn't even think that it was that severe. I mean, like, of course, I mean, I'm not saying that like the pandemic is like something to just scoff at, but like, I mean, it's like if you watch the world through the prism of a screen and what they're telling you is so much different than what you can observe with your own eyes and senses when you're out and about.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the case for a long time. I think this pandemic is really kind of really shows it better. But yeah, so I hope, I mean, I'm sure it'll be the same thing 40 years from now where the media is every day. It's, you know, if it bleeds, it leads kind of a thing. But hopefully, I would love for us to get kind of at least beyond that paradigm.
Yeah, I think enough people though are getting tired of that. You know, there's a mass exodus of Facebook lately. I have many friends that are just like, you know what, I'm done. I can't take the political back and forth anymore. Totally understand it, and I think that, you know what, if people can't responsibly, you know, engage in the news and in the Facebook and these kinds of things without the charge, and this also comes up in my interview with you asked about the profound things that I've learned over the series, is having a charge, an energy charge in it, so you can view these things and look at them and just sort of see them for what they are, and see that, and not have an energetic charge about it, which is a difficult place to be, but sort of see it from a neutral point. And if you can't do that, you know what? Leave it. Don't even engage in it. Go work in the garden. Go spend time with the family. And we're seeing that happen over and over and over again. And that's why people are sort of turning off the news and tuning into local community stuff and just doing, you know, YouTube used to be a sanctuary where it's like, I don't have to watch the news and commercials and I could just, you know, chill out and on the internet. And now we can't even do that anymore. But
you can't, not on YouTube.
Yeah, well, you're finding other platforms, you're finding other areas to invest your time in. You're doing, you know, this is part of the evolution, and I see the evolution now, and I see the natural migration of humanity just dropping this polarity game, which again gives me sort of I hate to use the word hope, but gives me the vision of the future. Being like, no, there's no this dystopian future of Mad Max that will never happen. This whole, you know, we're talking about the military state, police state, and forced vaccinations, or anything that will never happen. There will be civil war before that happens. I see that happening as people have gotten too used to their freedoms to have them taken away and to become, you know, communist China, which isn't even really that bad, but still bad enough where we're in that state. I think there's enough people that would go against it that there would be a second, revolution on American Revolution. And it's funny, astrology-wise, we're kind of in the same, you know, if you look at the planets and everything, we're actually in the same planetary cycle and everything as the first American Revolution. So it's interesting how all this stuff interconnects.
That's fast. I hadn't heard that before. That is very interesting. Yeah. Well, Reuben, definitely thank you so much, man, for coming on. And yeah, this was a very good discussion. I know I always ask it, and I think it always probably sounds so repetitive, but how can we follow all of your work that you're doing? Like, and are there any are we going to be able to see you in any kind of games or any kind of shows or properties coming out anytime soon? Like, yeah, I guess if you wouldn't mind kind of plugging some of your stuff.
Yeah, well, definitely keep your eyes out for Last of Us. Hopefully you won't watch the Last of Us 2. Hopefully you won't watch the spoilers. I'm not, so that'll be fun and exciting to see in what way and fashion I participated in that franchise. That's all I can say. Is my participation is in there somewhere. Then, as I worked on the first one, I worked, if you didn't know, I've played some characters and did the stunt coordinating for the first one. let's see what else is out there game wise. I think that's all I can really talk about. But for my other stuff, I have a series that's on Gaia right now where we went deep into many of the subjects that I cover in the series, and in the series I go much deeper. There's actually 2 seasons. We're on season 2, and every week on Gaia, still about halfway through the season for season 2. On every Monday, a new episode comes out. So you can go to Gaia, the Gaia Network. I think it's just Gaia.com. Or you can go to my website, interviewwithed, all one word.com, and that'll take you either to the Gaia site, or I also have them available on Vimeo. If you follow me on Twitter or Facebook, I usually post updates of new, episodes of my show coming out, or, if there's any kind of gaming project I'm a part of, or which convention season is completely dead this summer, which is actually kind of cool. I needed a break. But looking forward to getting back to interacting with the fans at anime cons and comic cons. It's always fun. I'll usually update my Facebook and Twitter accounts with all that fancy information. And on my Instagram account, I keep it, if you don't want to get any kind of, well, I guess I do post some things, but for the most part, it's just cool pictures. And I have a bit of a hobby when it comes to photography and drone photography. So you can check out my stuff on Instagram there.
One question, hopefully this doesn't sound like I'm like a weirdo nut, but like, I feel like I've looked up before, like photos of like, I think it was like on your Instagram or just like Google, and I've seen photos of you, and like, it says that this one woman is like your wife and she's like in cosplay. Is that actually your wife? Because I feel like I've seen the same person like multiple times. Okay, that actually is your actual wife. Okay.
Yes.
I wasn't sure if that was like an internet thing with like, oh, it's his wife. Because then I saw other photos. I'm like, I don't know. Like, she's not, like, you're not in them with her. That's what I thought. I'm like, okay, that's probably the case.
Yeah, she cosplayed as a lady at the Tokyo Game Show, like 2 years ago or whatever, when they were just announcing Devil May Cry. And the fans went crazy. And actually, Itsuno-san, the director of the game, I guess he was so blown away by her cosplay that he actually invited her on stage and gave her a little introduction. So the internet had fun with that one.
Okay, well, nice. Yeah, because that's something I've wondered. I don't know why I've never actually brought it up to you before. Sure. I don't know why it's like to this interview, but yeah, that's very cool. That's cool that you're able to like incorporate her into like, and that she wants to be involved with this. Like, I think that's really cool. I mean, I can imagine that there's probably like other people in that industry. Like, I imagine there's other probably wives that like, I don't know, probably like look down when it's like, oh, what does your husband do? It's like, oh, well, he's the voice of like Cloud from Final Fantasy VII. And like, she looks down and like, it's like, telling her friends, and they're like, I don't even know what any of those words even mean.
Right. Yeah. My wife's pretty hip on the game. She's, I guess her favorite game is Zelda, but she'd known enough about games. She wasn't like into Devil May Cry or anything, but she has enough friends in that world, and I'm super blessed. I've found a wife who really gets me and understands me, and from that world to my ET stuff and to just art in general, and we like the same music, and it's just super blessed to have someone that can understand me in a multi-dimensional way.
Nice. I'll have to mention that to like my best friend. He's kind of said, I think like facetiously, he's like, I don't want to marry a girl that doesn't know the difference between Boba Fett and Jango Fett. Oh. And I told that friend, I'm like, man, that's a big, I mean, he's a good looking guy, and he he does like well for himself career wise. So he's not like a slop or anything like that. But when he said that, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think that's a high bar to have. But maybe it's not. Let
me tell you, I've been in this otaku culture, going to comic cons and stuff from a very young age, from junior high school. So I've been a lifelong nerd myself, and I have to tell you, the the selection, I should say. Selection, is that even a good word? It's a much bigger world now, and there's a lot more beautiful women to choose from, beautiful and intelligent, and it's just the whole thing has gotten so mainstream. So I'm sure your friend won't have any problem finding anybody who his heart desires that will be able to tell the differences.
I mean, it is an obscure thing, though. I mean, I don't know if, unless you're like hugely into Star Wars, you might not know the difference, and it's so complicated because, Boba is a clone anyways of Jango, but
I'm sure
that's great.
I'm sure he could he should have posted that yesterday, right? On his Facebook, and see what kind of reactions he could have gotten. Or it's not too late.
Yeah, I guess it's true. All right, Reuben. Well, definitely, man. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. And I'll talk to you again soon. We want to thank today's sponsors again, the Tax Defense Group and Writer Junkie. You can contact the Tax Defense Group at 800-850-7973. And Writer Junkie's phone number again was 805-587-7966.